So I'm going to keep my promise. I'm going to get her running, take her to shows, and show her off. She will be a driver. She will not be a trailer queen. She will not be a trailer queen. If I make a mistake that destroys this engine, then one, I'm going to feel really bad because Joni's going to see these videos and probably lose faith in trusting me with the car. And I'm loving this car. Even though it has not driven an inch since I've owned it, I come through my garage door in the morning to head to work and stuff. I see that quarter panel. I'm like, that's mine.
So, John is overjoyed with finding his dream car. Problem is, it has not been started in 6 years.
I can't show it. I want somebody to have it that's going to love her.
His goal, get it running, fix it up a little, drive it to a show. Joni could be there and relive old times with the Camaro that she and Rob drove to car shows. And periodically, John is going to take video for me to edit.
All right, it is Saturday morning, and so all my neighbors are out doing yard work. In the first video, we got it started. But it wouldn't idle. It kept dying at idle.
I'll put a link to that video at the top of the screen, which includes John finding his dream 1969 Camaro.
With a little bit of gas, I can keep it running, but we're going to work on the carburetor tuning today.
John rebuilt the Edelbrock 4-barrel carburetor on his own. He has a 9-to-5 job, Monday through Friday. So on the weekends, he's a hobbyist working on his classic Camaro. Okay, so you're going to see, well, mistakes made. But isn't that what we learn from? Especially when we do try this at home.
I've had a bit of luck. I've moved the secondary fuel filter to in front of the fuel pump, and we can see that we've picked up a little bit of debris from the gas tank. I've already cleaned this out once. It's gotten better as I run it and kind of cycle through. See if we can get it to where I can put it in gear without the engine dying. All right, getting ready to start it up. And part of the problem I have is the car does not have a choke cable. I have to manually engage the choke, but when I do and it starts cranking over, the choke releases. So what I'd have to do is I've got a little paper clip for right now until I get around to installing a choke cable. Priorities, and that'll hold it.
Vulcan, the family dog.
Okay, let's try to start it up.
And to do that, you may need to get by with a little help from a friend, because that engine needs to be running to set mixture and idle.
Got to get some heat in this engine. Because I could have gone out and bought a car that was more complete, that was in better condition. Does not like being cold. And gone and driven it. But I have no investment in that car aside from the financials. So there are a couple different ways you can tune an old engine. Vacuum gauge being the most common. And the idea is to get the most vacuum at the lowest idle speed possible without the engine stalling. We're idling high still. And our oil pressure's looking good. We're just about at running temperature.
The left and right idle mixture screws, where counterclockwise is richer, clockwise is leaner, but you'll never understand until you actually do it. Moving that right side idle mixture screw affects that left side. Oops.
And when I was running through it, I was doing the initial kind of tuning once I had the carburetor rebuilt, and it was idling rough. Went through, checked everything, found the spark plug wire issue, replaced that. It was still idling rough. So it corrected a misfire potentially. But in the way that the needle's jumping back and forth, and the idle adjustment screws were not really making much of a difference, started to suspect a vacuum leak. So I've tried twice to tune this carburetor. Kind of rough. I was talking with my friend. He was thinking, okay, maybe we need to look at the ignition system. Verifying the cylinder firing order, making sure that all the plugs are connected to the right spot on the distributor, everything's plugged in. As I started doing that, I started tracing the wires. Cylinder number 2, the wire is damaged. I mean, not just a little bit. I'm still getting some garbage out of the gas tank. I can't see it anymore, but I'm getting some more debris in there. Got some new plug wires on order. Changing out plug wires one at a time. That way you don't get them mixed up. You don't get your firing order wrong, assuming it's right to begin with. So with my plug wires, since they are under header and it is very close fitting, picked up some heat shielding. Just a good idea to make sure they're okay. They don't accidentally rub and burn, melt. Already halfway done. Dielectric grease for the distributor. And a little bit of dielectric grease. Saturday morning lawnmowers begin. There's an old adage, you buy a project car, you're just buying someone else's headache. I'm not quite there yet. And allegedly this car was a mostly runner when parked. But it did develop an issue, and I'm hoping it's the plug wire. That'll make things great and let me move on to the next part of the car that I need to address, which will be the oil pan. Started to suspect a vacuum leak, so I went around the engine with some carb cleaner, just spraying around, and we were seeing the idle would jump up, which means that the flammable carb cleaner was getting sucked into the intake and combusting, and we were seeing that increase the vacuum. All right, found a vacuum leak between the intake manifold and the heads. It's towards the back, but I'm going to go around and just make sure all the heads bolts are tight. If that doesn't work, then we'll have to pull the intake manifold and then apply new sealant around it. In my initial tuning of the engine, I've been hooking up the vacuum gauge to the accessory port on the carburetor that's not used. Now that I'm kind of getting things narrowed down, hopefully, and figuring out what's going on, I'm going to start coming off of the intake manifold. I'm disconnecting the transmission vacuum line since I'm not putting it in drive or while it's going through this. Every time I put it in gear, the engine dies. So we're going to get it started up here in a moment and see what we're looking at now that we've tightened down the intake manifold a little bit, see if we've got a cleaner idle, see if we still have vacuum leaks. Spray, close up the choke. I think it's running a little better now that I've tightened down the bolts, but we're still having a vacuum leak of sorts. Or the intake manifold's gonna have to come off. Gonna have to reseal around it. This is what the initial fuel filter looks like. All of that is debris coming in off of the gas tank. Sometimes this filter will go dry. The one up top will stay filled. I'm not sure what to do about it. At least not yet. Just one thing at a time. So in order to get into the trunk at all, we had to remove the entire back seat. It had the beautiful trunk mat. It was very well done for kind of an original condition.
Also found Rob's old show car sign.
But the trunk wasn't sealing, and so ended up finding a ton of rust. Not horrible, it hasn't really eaten through, but I need to get in here with a wire wheel, remove the rust, and then get some specialty paint and just kind of clean this up so that way it doesn't actually go through the trunk floor. But that is not for today. The car didn't come with any keys. I need to replace all of the locks.
Another necessity when you just are building a car to drive.
It's way easier than expected.
Got to have a trunk key.
Alright, so out with the old and with the new. This will be mockery, but let's get this inserted correctly. Half of the benefit of recording yourself as you do this is if you miss a step or you lose a piece, or forget something, you can see what you did. So I just tried to put it back together and missed this bracket that holds the lock in place, pinches it in place. Alright, so that's done. So I think part of the problem with the trunk not sealing was that the latch wasn't set correctly, and so it wasn't holding the trunk lid down, which is what letting water in. So I'm going to try to fix that while I'm in here. Start at its deepest setting. I'm not going to tighten these down too much, just hold them in place. Not tightening down too much. Still not grabbing. I want to get this set to where it'll close as tightly as I can. So there we go. Looks good up here. At least is alright. And all I can think of is climb to the trunk, close it, and set it in from the inside. But that means I need someone to let me out. So close. I can feel it wanting to catch. Closed, it's latched, but the gap here is way different from over here. Thinking that's no problem. I might need to realign the trunk. Something I wanted to address from the first video, there were a couple comments about this dent that I didn't find until after I had purchased the car. Some people speculated that it happened during shipping, and I can assure you that's not the case. If you go back and watch the video from when this was loaded, you can actually see just the smallest bit of the indentation at the bottom. Joel did an amazing job taking care of this car. While he had it, he was sending me updates, texts. I knew exactly where this car was basically at all times. I'm sure I could reach under there and push it out, but I'm gonna wait until I can have a paintless dent guy get in here and take a look at the car. It's only under a little bit of certain lighting conditions that it really stands out, and so I'm fine driving the car or using the car as is until I'm onto the paint, after I get it running and driving. I'd like to convert the car over to disc brakes so that way it'll stop better, it'll perform better, it'll be easier to maintain. In your opinion, or from your experience, which brakes should I be looking at for this car? Have you had good experience with certain things? Let me know, because I do try to read the comments and I'd like to know what your opinions are.